Background essay. There is a certain enthusiasm in the liberty that makes human nature rise above itself in acts of bravery and heroism. Alexander Hamilton, founding father that helped create our government. No one should ever be locked away simply because they share the same race, ethnicity, or religion as a spy or terrorist. If that principle is not learned from the internment of Japanese Americans, then these are very dangerous times for our democracy. Fred T. Korematsu, Japanese American that sued the government during World War II. Since its revolutionary beginning, America has made advances towards applying the ideal of all men are created equal to every citizen. The 19th and 20th centuries would see voting rights expanded to people of all economic statuses, races, and genders, while the 14th Amendment would go on to give all equal protection under the law. However, too many living during these centuries, promises did not match reality. African American communities were forced to endure the horrific inequalities of Jim Crow. European immigrants confronted discrimination based on language, religion, and struggles with assimilation. On the West Coast, immigrants from many Asian countries were subjected to harsh immigration laws, starting with the Naturalization Act of 1790, where Asians could not become citizens, and continuing with the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, which almost ended immigration from China. During these same centuries, life in China and Japan was economically challenging if you were born into lower social classes. Meanwhile, the United States and the nation of Hawaii offered many economic opportunities. In Hawaii, sugarcane plantation owners recruited Japanese men to work in the fields. And by 1891, Japanese immigrants began coming to the US to work as tenant farmers. As Japan began to modernize, the economy needed more resources and markets to sell their goods. But isolationist policies by other nations shut Japan out, causing some rulers in Japan to use their military prowess for expansion. By the 1930s, Japan had extended into China, Mongolia, and the Korean Peninsula. And islands in Southeast Asia. Japan aligned itself with Germany at the start of World War II in order to gain more land, resources, and power. In the early part of World War II, Japan quickly gained control of more territory as the United States tried to respond with diplomacy and economic embargoes. Why didn't the US just go to war? Too many Americans wanted to remain neutral after the horrors of World War I, and because of the popular belief that the war was over there. All of this began to change in 1941 as Japan continued its aggressive expansion into parts of Southeast Asia. The United States government was faced with the reality that the Allied powers might not survive without their intervention. Top Japanese imperial leadership also saw the increasing likelihood of US involvement and were now facing a decision of their own. Should Japan wait to see what the United States would do, or should they strike first, knocking the US out before they could fight back? The decision was made to strike the US and attack Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. It happened on December 7th, 1941. While the attack devastated the American Pacific Fleet, it did not cripple the US's ability to enter the war. The US declared war on Japan and the other Axis powers on December 8th, throwing the US into the biggest war in modern history. Questions remained after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Could Japan strike again, and could they use the hundreds of thousands Japanese citizens living in the US and its territories to work against the United States? Many in the government and in our country believed the answer to this question was yes, and felt that steps needed to be taken to ensure the security of the Western United States. President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, which ordered the forced removal of Japanese Americans from their homes and 2 concentration camps throughout the US. One Roosevelt advisor justified it by citing the ability to preserve national safety, not for the purpose of punishing those whose liberty may be temporarily affected by such action, but for the purpose of protecting the freedom of the nation, which may be long impaired, if not permanently lost, by inaction.